Welcome, basketball fans, to the best fantasy basketball podcast on the internet. Show where we share the best advice, current news, rankings, and more for all things fantasy basketball for our own Dynasty League. I'm your host, Josh Browning, and here along with my co-hosts, Canyon and David. And today we're going to go around the horn. We're going to talk in the news about two topics: the Knicks roster changes and that decision to make Kemba Walker ride the bench and how that affects our league. And then a little later, we're going to discuss news about John Wall coming back from injury on the Houston. So let's get started. Canyon, you go first. What's your thoughts on what the hell's going on in New York?
Yeah, I always love going first in a debate. That puts me in the best position possible. So I guess my initial thought is makes a ton of sense benching Kemba. If you look at his plus minus over the year thus far, he's something like -12, something like that. He's shooting awful. If you watch the Knicks, they have no semblance of offense. The starting lineup, I think, is the worst starting lineup in the NBA thus far this season. I've heard that on a couple of different podcasts. And ultimately, I think Kemba has a lot to do with that. I was surprised to see that he went all the way from the starting lineup to not playing. So the news I saw, he's not even going to be in the rotation at all. And then I really questioned the decision to start Alex Burks in his place. I don't know, Dave, what did you think about that? Would you be starting Alec in this position? That's certainly not the Knicks point guard I would have chosen to take the helm instead of Kemba.
Well, yeah, I do a few things. I think it depends on who I am in this situation. Am I Tom Thibodeau? Am I Tom Thibodeau's boss? Am I above the GM, or am I like the president of basketball operations? If I'm all the way at the top, if I'm ownership, if I'm above ownership, I'm getting rid of James Dolan. That's the first step. Let's get rid of this guy. I don't even need to know who the president of basketball operations is, but I'm getting rid of this guy because he's failed me for 30 years. I'm getting rid of the GM because your top picks are Emmanuel Quickley, who's not panned out, Obi Toppin, who is, maybe he has potential, but he's already old. He hasn't really panned out. And I don't even know who they got this last year. It doesn't even matter. They're not good. Failed in the draft consistently. Yeah. Tom Thibodeau is a mirage, I'd say. He's slowly destroying the entire starting lineup by playing them 40 minutes a night until they all self-destruct. This is what happened to Lou Aldang. This is what happened to Joakim Noah. This is what happened to Derrick Rose. And now the only reason Rosen's starting now is because Tom Thibodeau already destroyed him once and he doesn't want to destroy him again.
So this is like mercy on Thibodeau's play. So he's like, I already ruined one all-star, potentially Hall of Famer's career. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, I don't want to just end his entire career this time and maybe even just kill him outright. But to start Alec Burks, I think this is rooted in Thibodeau's traditional decisions to have someone that, he's benching Kemba Walker because he's one of the worst defenders in league history. And he's always been this. He's never been good. The fact that Thibodeau thought that he would work out for this team while being a good defender is kind of weird to me. Like, if you want Kemba Walker on your team, you're expecting him to have a high usage rate. The ball goes through him. He generates points. He creates plays. And he's a defensive sieve, and you work around that. The problem is, everyone behind Kemba Walker on New York also kind of sucks at defense. Like, Julius Randle's not great. Mitchell Robinson is always getting in foul trouble. RJ Barrett's still young. And I don't even know who Evan Fournier, of course. Yeah, he's garbage. So he wants to get someone in that can generate some offense. So you can't start Emmanuel Quickley. But he also wants someone who isn't garbage at defense. So he can't start Kemba Walker or Derrick Rose. So he's only left with Alec Burks, and I think that's how he arrives there.
Well, and I'm curious. I'd be curious about what y'all think about Kemba. This decision also, aren't they paying him almost a max contract too? Because they took that contract off Boston. There's just so much money. I don't know what they're doing over there. This kind of gives us a little bit of a transition over to how does that affect our league? And specifically what we want to call out is Dad, Stan's Salty Sea Dogs, and Dustin's Whimsical Wombats. They had a trade early on in the season. Canyon, maybe talk a little bit
Was
about
it this
that and
season
how
or last season?
No,
It was this season.
It was this
Okay.
season. It was early on, and originally I think we were saying that Dustin like won out and almost trade raped him, but I think now we're maybe singing a different tune. So, Canyon, what are your thoughts on that?
So I will be honest. There was a moment where I
Remind me of the trade again. Who was it? For who?
Oh yeah.
Kemba
So
Walker for who?
I think this was 1 week before the season started. Dustin traded away Cam Reddish and TJ McConnell for Kemba Walker. Straight up, no picks involved. Now, I think Dustin's logic at the time was he needed to drop a player anyways to keep James Bouknight, who was his second-round draft pick that he wanted, or I'm sorry, his first-round draft pick.
That hasn't worked out well.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think that's worked out very well. But I will also say that I will say there was a moment there where I thought this trade was in Dustin's favor. Kemba was like a 34-point fantasy point per game guy last season, something like that.
Yeah.
Even though he was injured a
higher.
lot, I don't think anybody anticipated him falling off this heavily. I will say that I did anticipate him falling off because his fit in New York was awful. Like, he doesn't bring anything that they needed. He doesn't fit, to the point David already made. He doesn't fit the like defensive scheme. He just doesn't make any sense. And as a result, I'm not shocked to see his minutes decline. I'm not shocked to see his opportunities decline. Now, how does that affect the trade? Honestly, I think there's a real possibility that Dad just got some meager assets for a zero. Like, that's kind of what it feels like. And honestly, I don't even know how impactful the trade was at this point. Like, Cam Reddish is stuck behind three other dudes in a huge Atlanta lineup.
At least.
That has no minutes to go around. TJ McConnell's
And
good.
the other guys he's stuck behind are fairly young, so it's not like this.
Yeah,
it's
DeAndre
changing.
Hunter plays his exact same position. He's better, right? Like, the only guy on that roster that's worse than him who plays his position is Danilo Gallinari. So, like, I like Cam Reddish, but he needs to get traded to get
Kevin Huerter.
Yeah, he needs to get traded to have any value. TJ McConnell's decent, but he's stuck on the forever oblivious and forever like terrible Indiana Pacers.
He's got to have a great second half of the season, though, because
Malcolm
they're blowing up Malcolm Brogdon. He's going down in flames. He's averaging like 42 minutes a game.
He gets injured every season. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, honestly, Dad wins the trade ultimately because he just got something. And quite frankly, it looks like Kemba may never play meaningful basketball minutes again. Like, in a world where...
I don't know if I agree with that, though.
Really? What do you think is going on with Kemba as far as, like, he was hurt all throughout Boston, and that was kind of do you think it's maybe that he's hurt or that he just doesn't fit into their scheme, kind of like Christian Wood, like at Detroit, and now he goes to Houston and he can play his game. Talking about my guy Christian Wood, not to tip my hat or anything, but I mean, do you think it's like one of those situations where he's just not in the right lineup and he's healthy, but he just doesn't have the opportunity, he just doesn't like the culture that they're doing?
Yeah, I think he's 100% doomed as long as he's in New York because of who the coach is. The coach is stuck in his ways. He will only coach a specific way. Like he's the complete opposite of a Greg Popovich, who was always defense first. You will not play unless you play great defense. That was the early 2000s, late 90s. Then he transitioned his coaching style to more of an offensive flow because his players got older. The star players can't play lockdown defense anymore. And then now, like, it's all about just run and gun. So he adjusts to the lineup that he has. Tom Thibodeau does not adjust to the lineup he has. He just tries to recreate the Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Chicago Bulls to be a defensive lockdown team. And then maybe you have some offense around it. So I think the thought was they needed more offense. They needed someone else to go to and to generate points, because that's kind of how they flamed out last year. Was once Julius Randle got double teamed, there was no one else to do anything. So they went out, they got Kemba Walker, they got Evan Fournier. What they forgot, and I suppose what Tom Thibodeau forgot about himself, is both those guys suck at defense. So of course he's going to flame out on them.
I think it's a fair point. I forgot. Admittedly, I forgot that Kemba only signed a 2-year with them. I kind of thought he was in like a 5-year deal and that he was going to finish his career in New York. And I didn't think he was going to ever play meaningful minutes again. But if he can find another team, then yeah, he could still have value for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think even if he moves out of the starting lineup, they're going to try and find a way to trade him somewhere. And once he's traded, while he stays in New York, it's not like he's not playing.
And he's not getting terrible minutes or fantasy points either. Like he's kind of inconsistent, but even with the lower minutes that he's getting right now, he's
going to get 0 minutes now. He's not
getting any.
No, he's literally out of the rotation. That was the report. He will not play.
I don't believe that.
I feel like they're going to realize that they have like what's his contract at right now. Like they're going to have
honestly, like $9 million. He's not getting a king's ransom.
I feel like, yeah.
I think it's a fair point. I would say in light of like overall fantasy impact. So here's my thing. I think Quickly isn't a bust. I disagree with David's point. I like Quickly. I think he was a star in Summer League. I think as long as he's on a Tom Thibodeau team, he won't play. I think,
but he is a good defender.
He's fast. The reality
can't shoot.
The reality is, I think Tyler's team just took a huge upward swing in the sense that Alec Burks, or at least for this season, because Alec Burks as a starter with 28 minutes a game has already proven he can be a 30-point per game guy, like fantasy point per game. He was that. Like
a few years ago.
Yeah.
Where was it?
It was in New York.
It was in New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember he was on my fantasy team and he was kind of killing it after he got traded from Golden State, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you'll have a
No, that was it. It was in Golden State for the first half of the year. And there was nobody else there.
And for the first half of last year, he was decent in New York. So like, I mean, honestly, like from a basketball perspective, I have no idea what they're doing over there, but like, from a fantasy perspective, the biggest winner here for me is Tyler's team. Like, obvious. I mean, that's kind of obvious because, his guy is being made the starter. But, like, I think Alex Burke will actually make meaningful strides out of that. We'll be able to produce points out of it. I have Quickly's not going to play a lot of minutes because freaking Tibbs loves Derrick Rose. And he's going to be the backup. Like, yeah. So, I don't know. I think the only real winner here is Tyler.
I think it's going to be a short-term window. I think Alec Burke's stats are kind of inflated right now. I mean, he's averaged 37 points and 50. He's had 37 fantasy points and 50 fantasy points the last two games since starting. He's playing 39 minutes each game. I think this is more of like a statement from Tom Thibodeau that he's leaning into, and he's not going to ride Alex Burks 39 minutes every single night. And even if he does, Alec Burks isn't going to, be hitting 50% from three and all this other stuff. I think it's going to turn into more of a timeshare with Rose.
So basically, as like a summation to this Kemba trade, what we're saying is winner of it, Tyler, because Alex Burks going to get that starting spot. He's already averaging pretty like high 30s right now. He just had a 50.
High 20s, but
I think he just had a 50.9.
There's no chance on earth he averages high.
Right now, Alex Burks for the season is averaging 24 fantasy points a game.
Okay. Yeah.
But since this change, he's averaging like 44 fantasy points a game.
Yeah. And he just had a 50.9. So I feel like Tyler's set to get up from this thing that's happening. And then out of that trade, I think we're saying that Stan is the one who's getting a little bit more of that trade off of that. Obviously, like if the player that you traded for on Dustin's thing isn't playing, so at the time being, until Kemba Walker either starts to get playing time, Thibodeau starts to say, oh, never mind, it was just an act, and like puts him back, or they trade him. I feel like the dad's the winner in that.
Honestly, I think I want to be on Dustin's side. I think I'd rather want Kemba Walker. I feel like
Okay.
both. I feel like TJ McConnell and
Cam Reddish.
His name, Cam Reddish. Yeah, I feel like they're kind of players that I'd hold on to, and they're taking up 2 roster spots where I could be doing something else with one of those 2 spots. Kemba Walker is only one roster spot, and I think honestly, I don't think Kemba Walker's done. I think he's still going to be productive middle of the road guy. I think he's going to get back up to like high 20s, maybe low 30s, at least in a season or two. And those other 2 guys, I don't think they will.
Okay. Well, that being said, okay, let's
And trade Alec Burks. That's my suggestion as well to Tyler. Trade him now.
Trade him
before
now.
something changes again. Tom Thibodeau decides to bench this guy.
Speaking of benching guys and trading guys, John Wall. All right. What do we think about that? Basically, for those of you who don't know,
he's back.
He's
Daniel's
back.
Gonna regret that trade.
Oh yeah, he's the mean green guy who gets injured on your team. But he was.
Bad.
I know, it's off the top of my head. So basically, for those of you who don't know, Houston has announced that they are going to start putting him into the lineup. And prior to that in this season, they were like saying that he just didn't fit into the lineup or he had health concerns, which we all know was a little bull crap, was just them saying, well, how can we really tank this year without, and like, how can we not play John Wall? But what are you guys thinking about that? How does that affect Kara's team? How does that affect Houston's team and going into that lineup and anybody else? I mean, I got Christian Wood. Dustin's got Kevin Porter. Having this guy on his team, having John Wall playing again definitely affects both of us. I have some thoughts on that, but why don't you go first, David?
Sure. So, okay, first off, if I'm Kara, John Wall's on my team. I am ecstatic. Yeah, the guy goes from honestly, just to get some context going into this conversation, I looked up Houston Rockets depth chart, which shows every player on the team and the starting at point guard, second, third, fourth, fifth player at point guard. And for each position, John Wall's not even on this, not even on this chart, which is kind of crazy. So that puts in perspective how certain everyone was that John Wall's not playing at all, ever. So for Kara, great that he's coming back. If I'm Kara, I'm waiting until John Wall hits a hot streak, and then I am striking up all sorts of conversations trying to trade this guy away. Maybe even you do what I think might happen in real life: trade John Wall for Kemba Walker.
Oh, okay.
I think together. I will say, no, for the record, I actually believe that is a real possibility. I don't know how serious you were, David, but I think that is a real trade that could happen. I think it helps both teams to be.
What do you think about John Wall being retraded for Russell Westbrook? And no lie, wouldn't he be a better fit?
Oh,
the Lakers?
Absolutely, he would be a better fit on the Lakers. So legitimately, I think it's an interesting. I agree 100% with your point that if you're Kara, you're so happy for at least the few weeks he's in Houston. Like, there's no one on that team that's getting Christian Wood is the only moderately good fantasy player on that team. He's going to have free reign to just score points. He's going to instantly become a mid to low 30s guy, almost without question in my mind.
Well, I think they're going to start him out slow, ramp him up, he needs to build his minutes up.
I mean,
because he didn't play in preseason either, right?
Not if he's conditioned. I guess it depends on his conditioning state.
That's just what I mean. Typically players have the whole preseason to get into basketball shape. They always say you can be working out and doing stuff every day, but until you're actually on the court, you're just not in good enough shape for basketball.
Not if you're Luka Doncic. He's always in basketball shape.
That's because he moves real slow.
From the beach in Croatia to LA, the Staples Center or the Crypto Center.
Yeah. I will agree with you though. I think Kara's obviously a hugest winner out of this. I think biggest loser is the biggest loser is Dustin. Honestly, Kevin Porter Jr. at least temporarily. I think long term, Kevin Porter Jr. is going to get minutes, and he's going to continue to play a lot at Houston. More than likely, what's happening and how Steven Silas gets value out of John Wall is he shows Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. how to run point in a way that doesn't turn the ball over 25 points a game, a game, which could be good for both of their development. Personally, as a Jalen Green holder, I'm actually happy about this because Jalen Green needs someone who's played successful
someone to rope him in.
Yeah, someone to teach him how to actually play NBA basketball. Right now, he's one of the most qualified people on the court when he's on that.
Eric Gordon, dude.
Yeah, is he going to learn how to play point guard from Eric Gordon? No. John Wall was the centerpiece of a Washington team, but I don't know, Dave. What is your thought there?
Yeah, I 100% agree. So if I were the Houston GM, I would be doing this to try and build John Wall's trade value. And you know what? If I'm Kara, maybe I hold on to see where he gets traded to. I'm not that big of a risk taker personally, so I'd probably try and trade him as soon as possible. But you never know. Maybe he ships to a team where he's a great fit and he plays 6 more years.
So
and
I love
who would be a good team to trade to John Wall, because I feel like
talking fantasy. You talking fantasy wise?
I'm talking fantasy in our dynasty league, because like everyone knows John Wall at this point. Like that, it's not you're not going to be sneaking over on someone.
I try and trade him to the top contenders right now. Or someone that's right on the cusp of maybe contending for a championship,
Tyler,
but isn't quite
like
there,
Tyler or something.
and needs to make a push now.
I think your best candidates for trade are Tyler and Tony. I think they're both teams that have a win now mentality. They're both good enough where they could make a push to the playoffs, and yet they have old teams. The reality is Kara just has to accept she's not going to get like great assets in return. She's either going to have to get high risk assets in return, draft picks, which is what I'd be asking for.
Yeah.
I'd be asking for draft picks and maybe a young player or like a moderately good player. Frankly, I'd be happy with 2 draft picks, like 2 first rounders over the next maybe 2 drafts, or a first and a second, like for John Wall. Steal. Like yeah, I think you're getting a steal. And then that's the reality of what you're going to have to accept, that you're not going to get commensurate value in the trade, and you just have to take future value, and you have to take it from a team who's willing to give future value away.
So basically, I'm just going to put into context for everybody listening. Basically, what Kara's position is she gave up Evan Mobley.
She
gave up draft picks.
No. She gave up Jalen Green.
She gave up Trey. Okay.
She gave up her draft pick, which
became Jalen Green. Yeah. So the original way she got John Wall.
I'm just putting it into context so that people can understand of what the situation is. I feel like if we're talking about winners and losers here, Ken is the real winner.
No, I mean
Jalen Green's not playing right now either.
He's playing terrible. He's playing like 17 fantasy points per game.
I would rather have Canyon's package. So
yeah, I would too. Obviously, I made the trade, but I think that I don't think it was a bad trade for her at the time. She didn't know what was going to happen. She didn't know John Wall wasn't going to play. I would also say she can still get good value. I mean, look at what I did with John Collins. I traded John Collins for Patrick Williams and James Wiseman. Nobody would say that those guys are an equal trade in a redraft league. But like, do they have way more upside than John Collins over the course of their career? Yeah. Probably. And
only because they're 2 players, I'd say.
Yeah, they're 2 players. No, that's what I mean. It's like I have a high roll where they could both be better than Collins. If only one ends up being better than Collins and one is as good or slightly less, I end up with more more players. Ultimately, I think she just has to be willing to take less value today. I already said that, but
I'm not disagreeing. I was just kind of poking fun at you there. I'm not disagreeing with the fact that I think that the ideal trade for Kara for maybe seeing in a little bit of what John Wall can give her, maybe get her a few wins before we get into playoffs. But in the long term, I think she should be looking to dump him off, and picks is a great thing, because honestly, this year and maybe next year is the most you're going to get out of John Wall being productive, 30, 40-point person.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Really? More than that?
It depends. It really just depends on where he's traded to, He's only 31 years old. Say he changes his diet and his workout routine. He could play as long as a Chris Paul. He won't be as productive as Chris Paul, but that's still 7 more years at like 30 plus fantasy points per game. That's not bad.
Yeah. I mean,
and
keep in mind
that's a potential.
The last time he was the starting point guard on a team where he was playing a full season, he was a 40-point per game guy.
Yeah, but that was also 2 injuries ago and 3 years ago.
I'm just saying that neither of his injuries were career changing. They're recoverable injuries. He's had a ton of time to rest. And if he has any degree of good physical therapy.
Was one of them on Achilles?
Yeah, fair point.
But Kevin Durant proved maybe it's possible these days.
And Klay Thompson. So
John Wall looked good last year.
Yeah.
He did, and he was getting good numbers.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good point to that. I think we got everything that I wanted to talk about today. But we can just put it at that, and we will see you guys next time.